Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good evening, listeners. It is a lovely night, crisp and cool here in suburban Chicago. I've just stepped off the train and I stayed after class today to play a couple zombie-based board games with my students, which meant that instead of catching like the 3:30 train, I caught the 5:15 train, which means that it's just about 6 o'clock here and it is dark as the dickens. But that's okay. I had a lovely day and it's the weekend and I'm talking to you, my dear friends. So this is another of the episodes in the slow revelation of my top 50. If this is the first episode of this series that you've caught, I suggest you back up 2 episodes. In 2 episodes ago, I explained how I revised my top 50. And last episode, I revealed numbers 50 through 44. So this episode, it's going to be starting with number 43. And what I'm going to do is I'll reveal each game, talk about how its position has changed since last time it was on the list, if that's a thing. And then I want to talk about one thing I really like about that game, sort of my favorite mechanism or my favorite moment. It could be a favorite memory. The idea is instead of doing a broad discussion of the game, although last episode I did slip into that a little bit, this time I'm going to be doing more trying to focus on an individual moment or an individual feature as sort of the key for the game. So let's get started. Coming in at number 43 on my top 50 is Sagrada. Sagrada was on my 2019 top 50 in position 27, so it's dropped quite a bit, about 16 places. But that doesn't mean I like it any less. I really do like Sagrada a lot. Sagrada is a dice placement game in which you have a grid of spaces, and many of them are available to put whatever die you want in, but you can put in the dice you draft, and the goal is to match patterns and colors. So it's a really fun game. We have all the expansions for it so far, and we really enjoy them. I've heard that there's a Sagrada Legacy game in the works, which when that comes out, we will definitely be picking that up because we certainly enjoy Sagrada, and we'll be happy to have a specialized campaign to play for a few games. And so we really like Sagrada. So what is it that I like most about it? I really like the way that Sagrada provides in each game a different combination of luck mitigation factors. So because Sagrada is a dice drafting game, that means that you are drawing dice out of a bag and rolling them, and then everyone drafts from this shared pool, which means that sometimes you really need dice of a particular color and they just aren't coming out, or they come out and they rolled the wrong number and you just needed one of a particular color. Well, that's where the mitigation part of the game is just really tight. So each game you draw 3 tool cards, and these tool cards, they tell you which 90s metal songs to play. Just kidding. No, they give you different ways to change what the dice do or how they work or where they're going to go. There's a whole bunch of these cards, especially if you've gotten the expansions, that gives you more of the cards. And you can pay to use these cards by spending these gems that you got at the beginning of the game. And you get a number of gems based on how hard the board you choose is. So there's this built-in mechanism where the harder the board you choose, you get these 6 gems, which are each worth a point at the end of the game if you don't spend them. But you can spend them to mitigate what the dice are doing and try to get a higher score. Because most of the time, if you can fit a die into your board, it's probably scoring you more points than it would have if you hadn't put it in the board and you just took the gem. My number 43 game is Sagrada, designed by Daryl Andrews and Adrian Adamescu, and published by Floodgate Games. All right, on to number 42. My number 42 game is Terra Mystica. In 2019, this was in spot 33 on my list. It's down to 42, so it's dropped 9 spaces. Now, Terra Mystica is a large-scale engine-building game where you are sort of building a village, and that village allows you to produce certain kinds of income, which give you an engine to build more pieces of your village. And there's these magic things that you are circling around, and there's a whole bunch of great stuff going on in this game. It's very thinky, very tight, and you can really just get rocked by bad choices. I haven't had that happen too much, but I am also not a particularly aggressive player, nor do I play with particularly skilled Terra Mystica opponents. When in fact I have played with them, I often find myself really getting the table just getting run on me. So, I guess I am not as good at it as I would like to think I am. So, what is it that I like most about this game? I love the way that you manage your income in this game. Now, this is something that's been borrowed in many places since, but I think Terra Mystica still does it the best. The way it is you have a player mat and you have a bunch of little wooden pieces that you have arranged on your player mat at the beginning of the game. When you put those pieces onto the board, they uncover spaces on the board, on your player mat, and they provide you income for having done so. In other words, the having of the pieces there represents you haven't built them yet. And once you have built them, they now contribute to your economy. And the way they represent that is now you get however many things are showing on the spaces that have been vacated. This is an idea that was borrowed by Jamie Stegmaier in both Scythe and Tapestry. He really likes it. I understand it's also used in Gaia Project, which I have not played, and is the science fictional answer to Terra Mystica. I haven't played that in part because I have Terra Mystica, and so everything I've heard sort of talks about it as being very similar. I don't know. Generally, I'm just not that keen to try, although I guess if somebody put it in front of me and said, hey, you want to give this a try, I probably would. But thus far, I've found Terra Mystica to still be pretty fun. That said, I haven't really played it on the table very much, a couple times, but usually I'm playing it online, Board Game Arena, or sometimes on Waterdeep. So if you want to try Terra Mystica and you haven't, hit me up on those places. Or if you want to play, you're really good and you want to show me how it's done, I'd be happy to play with you. Send me a message. I'm Wombat929 at both of those places I mentioned. Or if it turns out Terra Mystica is on yukata.de, I'm also Wombat929 there. Easy to remember. So that's Terra Mystica, my number 42 game of my top 50. Ooh, I can't remember the names of the designers on that one. I think the publisher is Feuerland. That doesn't sound right, but it sounds right to me. All right, the next up is number 41, is a game that's new to my list. It didn't exist in 2019, so it's a pretty new game, and this is My City. My City is a legacy game from Reiner Knizia that, when you're done, does create a permanently playable game that, frankly, I haven't played and probably won't. It's the legacy campaign that I find particularly exciting. It's a very simple game. You have a series of shapes. Everybody has the same 8 shapes, 3 copies of each shape in 3 different colors. So you have a blue version of this T, like there's a T shape. You have a blue version of it, a yellow version of it, and a red version of it. And that's true for the other 7 shapes as well. So you have these 24 shapes, and it's a bingo style game. So there's a deck of cards that show the 24 different cards, and on your turn, or each turn, whoever's flipping the cards flips one of them over, and everyone puts that shape on their map. There's relatively simple restrictions on how the shapes are going to go on the map, but you're going to score based on how well you do in fitting all the pieces onto your map. Now, what is it about this game that puts it where it is? The experience of the Legacy campaign is delightful. It is just the right morsel of play. The game is about 20 to 25 minutes. It's designed to play 3 games at a time, so you play about an hour and a half. You get a nice taste of My City. You get into the rhythm of playing it. You get 3 games out, and each set of 3 games is a little bit of campaign addition. So you get this expansion of what the campaign is about, and you get to try out a slightly new mechanism. Each one has a slightly different thing going on. There's stickers that get put on your map, and you start scoring points in different ways. That said, it did suffer a little bit from a kind of runaway leader. The person who was winning at the halfway point very clearly won the whole campaign, and there wasn't really much the others of us could do about it unless they started just playing badly, which wasn't really the case. Nonetheless, it was a really good time, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. That's My City from Reiner Knizia. I will put this one on the watch, however. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2024, or the end of 2023, I usually do December or January in a year and a half, in 2 years, if this game falls back off the list. It only made it up to 41, so it's barely onto the list, and I'm not going to be able to play it again. I guess I might play the permanent one, but I think this is probably a game that rose up, and it's in this spot right now. We'll see how I feel in a couple years, if I'm still nostalgic for it. Okay, so that's My City from Reiner Knizia, Cosmos Games, my number 41. My number 40 is much like the games in my last episode, a classic that has, as I've played more and more new games, grown in my estimation because of how delightful it is, or how innovative it is, or how elegant it is, and that is Lords of Waterdeep. I feel like the last time I talked about Lords of Waterdeep at any great length on this podcast was when I was reviewing Yido, which was, as I said then, felt to me like a more complicated and less fun Lords of Waterdeep. As I have played more and more worker placement games, particularly ones where the building market expands as the game goes along, I've come to admire the simple system that Lords of Waterdeep uses. It's got a variety of mechanisms that make it interesting, tactical, and strategic, but it also is simple enough that it's definitely, it's Gateway Plus for sure. I wouldn't want to give it to a brand new person who'd never played a game. But I think that what's going on in that game is light enough that it would be fun to be able to play with people who are generally not deep gamers. And so what is it that I like best about that game? I love the mechanism of the way that the harbor cards get played. So there's a number of ways to get harbor cards in the game, but the only way to play them is to send one of your pawns to the harbor, where then you play one of these cards. Intrigue cards, I think they're called. And these cards do all sorts of things. Some of them are good. Some of them are like good for you and good for other people. Some of them are bad for other people, and some of them are really bad for other people. There's a whole spread of them. And this is one of the main ways, aside from just blocking what the other person wants, that interaction happens in the game. What I like about the mechanism they use for playing these cards is you put one of your workers on one of the spots that lets you play a card. And then at the end of the round, when everyone is done placing all their pieces, anybody who has a piece in the harbor gets to move that worker and activate it again. So you get this sort of, the game strongly incentivizes you to go and play one of these intrigue cards because you get to use your worker again. It's like a free action. And I love me some free actions. So Lords of Waterdeep, especially if you get the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion, is just a real delight and well worth a play if you get a chance. Probably worth a purchase, although I haven't bought it. But then again, that's because I have friends who have it, or I should say I had a friend who has it. This friend lost their house in a fire, so they don't have it anymore, although they are planning to replace it. So, Lords of Waterdeep, my number 40. My number 39 game is also new to my list, although I'm not sure why. I wonder if it was on my list. No, because it would have said it was on in 2017. Although I guess if it wasn't on in 2019, it wouldn't have. I should check. I bet it was on in 2017. This is Dead of Winter, a Crossroads game. Dead of Winter is a game that came out, I think 2015, 2016, from Plaid Hat Games, and it took the game community by storm. It had really, really great art, a fun theme. Zombies were still relatively new on the market at that point. People weren't talking about how zombies are an overworked theme, although I dispute that. Or I would say there's plenty of room for lots of zombie games. I don't know. I don't have a problem with more. But at the time, it hit all the right notes, and it was great. It also introduced what promised to be this really great new system, although we haven't really seen that emerge as much as we would have liked, called the Crossroads System, in which there's a deck of cards that had a whole bunch of fun sort of moral dilemmas on them, or story beats. And on your turn, the person to your left would draw one of these cards, and at the top, there would be a condition that they would read to themselves. And if you ever met that condition, sometimes the condition was like you have to control a certain character or whatever. Sometimes the condition was if you go somewhere, or if you go to a particular place, or if you kill a zombie or whatever. If you meet that condition, then they read that story beat, and then there's usually a choice that you have to make. Either you make it or a choice the colony makes. And these choices are usually very difficult. And the game, I think, instructs you to read the whole card, meaning you know what you get when you resolve the choice. My preferred house rule is that you don't know what you're going to get when you resolve the choice. And so you have to think about it and kind of puzzle it out a little and then resolve it as a group without knowing what you're going to get. I think that's the way more fun to play them. So obviously, Crossroads cards are my favorite thing about Dead of Winter. The downside to it is an extremely punishing game. It is in the cooperative mode, just when you're working together to try to win. You all have individual goals that you're trying to meet, and you want the colony to survive. That is very difficult on its own. On top of that, there is a chance that one of you will be working against the colony in secret. So you could have these traders among you as well as having these secret goals. And so it is a very hard game to win, almost demoralizingly so. But I still really like it. And that's why it is back on my list in position 39, I think. Is that where we are? And that's Dead of Winter, a Crossroads game from designer Jonathan Gilmour and Isaac Vega, and publisher Plaid Hat Games originally. I don't know who publishes it now, because I think when Plaid Hat Games split off from Asmodee, I believe that Dead of Winter was one of the properties they had to give up in order to split off. So I'm not sure if you were to buy a copy of Dead of Winter today, who's publishing it. All right, number 38 is a game that is as much about nostalgia and fun as it is about gameplay. This is A Touch of Evil, the Supernatural game. I've talked about this a lot before. A Touch of Evil is a sort of Ameritrashy, roll a dice and do stuff kind of game. You're drawing a lot of cards. There's a lot of flavor text. You have these fun colonial era investigators who are in a colonial town investigating some sort of colonial mystery, like evil scarecrow or Krampus or the headless horseman, that sort of thing. It's silly, it's fun, it's campy. It is a great game to play once or twice a year, and I have almost everything for it. And I'm very affectionate for it. I like the way the game plays. I like the corny photograph art. I really like it a lot. That's A Touch of Evil, the Supernatural game from Flying Frog Productions, designed by Jason Hill. And finally, the last game in today's episode, number 38 or 37, Cascadia. Cascadia is, if you didn't hear the episode where I talked about it a bit, a really interesting tile drafting game. It uses this newer mechanism that's sort of been all the buzz lately, called entwined drafting, where you have two choices, or you have pairs of choices, and when you draft, you have to take both things in the pair. So in Cascadia, you're drafting animal tokens to get points, and you're drafting land tiles to get points. And the land tiles, you get points for large swaths of connected land of the same type. In the animal tokens, you get points for animals arranged in a certain pattern. Now, the trick of the game is that some land tiles, each land tile can only take certain kinds of tokens. So it's complicated and overlapping and delightful. I really like Cascadia. It is a great option. It's a great game to give a try to. It has lovely art from Beth Sobel, so it looks pretty. The scoring conditions are a little confusing. I've had one game where somebody drastically misunderstood the scoring conditions and wasn't happy about the outcome. But overall, it's a delight. It's fun to play, and it's my number 37. That's Cascadia. I can't remember the name of the designers. Sorry, designers. So that brings me to the end of my next top 50 episode. I'm curious to hear from you. Have you played these games? Do you like them? Are they in your top 50? If so, you can share all that information with me, or the opposite if they're not, that too, over on Board Game Geek and Guild 3269. You can find a link from the show notes, or just go there yourself. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me, brendan@rattleboxgames.com, or you can send me a geek mail message to wombat929, and I will get back to you if I can. Thanks for joining me on my walk today. I hope that you're staying warm, because it's chilly here, and that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye. I haven't had that happen too much.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.